So we are going to get started here. So this is our Green Power Bootcamp. And the point of this bootcamp is just to tell you, our members, a little bit more about how the program works, how purchasing green power actually happens, so that you can have the confidence to go out and talk to other people about making the switch to green power. So you guys all know Mass Energy. We're a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1982. As a nonprofit, we're very mission-driven. We are very pro-consumer and pro-environment, and that's all of our programs are kind of centered around those missions. We operate a couple different programs. You're all familiar with our Green Power program, which is why we're here today. And that is a way for consumers to make the switch to electricity in their homes or small businesses. We also run a discount heating oil service, which is how we got our start back in 1982. It was kind of people around a kitchen table in Roslindale trying to find solutions for high oil prices, and it evolved into a buyers group for heating oil where you save people some money on the heating oil when they're purchasing heating oil for their home. We also have a renewable thermal program that's just getting off the ground, trying to find ways to help people get find more sustainable ways to heat their homes. And we also are very passionate about energy efficiency. We have energy efficiency experts on staff who can help our members with energy efficiency measures. And we have a clean energy director who is always trying to find kind of the new cutting edge things out there that around energy efficiency that can help our members use less. So again, we're very passionate about energy efficiency. If you ever need energy efficiency tips, I mean, we're all Green Power members here, so we are paying a couple cents extra per kilowatt hour that we use to support clean energy. So we always say the first step should be to use less energy in the first place. So if you ever need tips about energy efficiency, need to want to get a no-cost home energy assessment that we're all entitled to in the state of Massachusetts, you can always give us a call just at our main number, and we can get you connected with one of our energy efficiency staff members. And again, we do a lot of advocacy for good clean energy and energy efficiency policy. So, if you ever have questions or want to know what's going on in the policy world around clean energy, energy efficiency, you can check out our website, /energy efficiency. We have a great blog that we try to post on once a week, and we often write about energy efficiency. So that's just who we are and what we do, if you're not already familiar, and we're going to get started with the boot camp now. This is us. My name is Katie Kidwell. I'm the Marketing and Program Coordinator. That's me on the right, and with me is our Executive Director, Larry Cretion, and he is going to be talking a lot about the nitty-gritty of purchasing green power and fielding a lot of your questions. He's the expert here at Mass Energy, and I'll be talking a lot about how to talk about our programs with your friends and family. So, quick run through before we begin of exactly what we're going to cover. The first thing we're going to talk about is the status of renewable energy in Massachusetts today, the difference between the compliance market and the voluntary market, which is what we're participating. We participate in both, but as Green Power members, we're participating in the voluntary market for clean energy. We're going to go through exactly what Mass Energy's green power programs are. We're going to talk about renewable energy certificates and exactly how Mass Energy does business purchases green power on your behalf, exactly how it works with the power grid, principles of the power grid. We're going to talk a little bit about what we do in relation to competitive suppliers and the recent rate hikes. Two things you're probably all familiar with at present. And then lastly, we will go over kind of our identified best practices for talking to people about our program so that you can help us spread the word on clean energy and making the switch. So I'm going to pass it over to Larry Cretion, who will get started talking about some of the policy and the markets for green power.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Katie. Folks, I want to welcome you to this webinar. I hope you enjoy it as a break from shoveling snow, and we hope that we can provide you with some information you find interesting. Basically, what we all do is supplying green power, and as you do in consuming it, is to create a voluntary extension of state policies that we have here in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has one of the best policies called the Renewable Portfolio Standard, and what it does is it requires electricity suppliers like National Grid and NSTAR to have renewable energy in its portfolio, meaning in part of the mix. That law was passed in 1997, and 2003 was the first year that they had to have renewable energy in their portfolio, and it goes up by 1% per year. Slow but gradual, and in our viewpoint, it's not fast enough in order to deal with climate change, but it's still one of the best policies in the country. So here in 2015, National Grid or a competitive power supplier or NSTAR would have to have 10% Class 1 renewables in their portfolio. That's wind, solar, anaerobic digestion, in sources like that, the kind that would help displace fossil fuels on the grid. In order to qualify, the projects have to be built after 1997. Seems like a long time ago, but the idea is that if all the projects are post-1997 and we add to it, we add the amount of renewables into the grid, and they end up pushing off fossil fuels, particularly first oil, and then also natural gas, and we've had a lot of success in the last few years is knocking coal off the grid pretty much. This is what we would call the compliance market, because these suppliers have to comply with the state law. So it creates a real strong market for renewable energy in New England, and it's actually been the cause of most of the renewable energy projects that you might be aware of. And what we do here at Mass Energy is to try to work with people like you to create a voluntary addition to what the state law would require. So by making the switch, what you can do is you can jump decades ahead of state law. 10% in 2015 is pretty good, but you could be quite a bit more. You could be 110% by signing up with us, and so we appreciate the fact that you do. This graphic shows you essentially what we're trying to accomplish. It's just a good picture showing that it wasn't long ago there was almost zero wind and solar in the power pool, and then we're probably right now not quite, it looks like it's 50-50 in the middle there. We're not there at all yet, but ultimately the goal is to really minimize the amount of fossil fuels and have it having our energy mix made up of zero emission or low emission sources, so we can get to 80% carbon reductions by 2050. So right now we're going to show you a video that helps demonstrate how we operate our programs. It was actually done about 10 years ago, but it still has a lot of relevance, and we hope that you'll enjoy it.
Bum, 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 bum.
So that video was produced by students at the Rhode Island School of Design. One question we got would be if Massachusetts wanted to get up to 50% renewable energy rather than what we're at now, which is 10%, and how do we get there? A lot of us at Mass Energy, when we do advocacy, we do some lobbying on Beacon Hill. We work with a lot of other groups like the Conservation Law Foundation and the Acadia Center and Clean Water Action, and we've actually asked some legislators to file legislation that would increase the rate at which renewables are added to the grid. So Senator Downing from Western Massachusetts is the chairman of the Energy Committee. He actually just filed a bill the other day that would increase the annual increase from 1% to 2%. And so that would be at the rate that we need in order to make things happen. That would create a lot of more demand for renewable energy. So that's one way. We think that policy should, where essentially everybody is contributing to adding more green power is what we need. But the other way is we need to encourage more people like you to sign up for green power. So that's another way we can add renewable energy to the grid by voluntary consumers. So with that, I'll get into a little bit about what our program's all about. Some of you are signed up for New England Wind, which is 100% Massachusetts wind power. That costs you 3.8 cents per kilowatt hour over and above what you would normally pay National Grid. New England Green Start is 2.4 cents per kilowatt hour. It's a mix. It's not just wind, but it also has some solar, some cow power or anaerobic digestion, and hydro that's certified by the Low Impact Hydro Institute. And so it's a little less expensive, New England Green Start than New England Wind, and that's because it has some hydro in there, which is less expensive. And the reason it's less expensive is because the hydro does not qualify for the Massachusetts Renewable Portfolio Standard, so it's in a different kind of a market. So to be straightforward here, you get a little bit more impact in terms of displacing fossil fuels with New England Wind than with New England Green Start. But both products, I think, are, we try to make them affordable, and they each support renewable resources of the type that we want to see here in Massachusetts. If you're a National Grid or a Western Mass Electric customer, you're paying for these programs right on your bill. If you're an NSTAR customer, unfortunately, NSTAR hasn't been as easy to work with, and so we are billing NSTAR customers separately, but it's tied to monthly usage. We're able to pull that information from NSTAR, but we have to charge NSTAR customers on their credit card on a monthly basis. Either way, it's pretty easy. Really, if you filled out the forms, obviously you're on this call. We just need your account number, we need your identifying information, and then we're able to put you into the system with National Grid, Western Mass Electric, or with NSTAR, and then we can bill you on a monthly basis. We started our program over a dozen years ago, and we sat down with a lot of environmental groups to ask environmental groups, if we were to run a green power program, what are the types of resources, what would you want to have in a product that you could feel proud about? And so we sat down with Mass Audubon Society, Massachusetts Climate Action Network, Environment Massachusetts, and Sierra Club, Clean Water Action, and they helped us actually design the programs that you're looking at today. In the last few years, we've gotten very close with other organizations. One is Center for Ecotechnology, which is based in Pittsfield and Northampton and Springfield out in western Massachusetts, and a great group, Mothers Out Front, that's been very active in the last couple of years. So we continue to work with groups like that to help make sure that we're doing the right thing, and they end up, they endorse us, and they tell their members to sign up with us. It's the best way that we can advertise. Mass Audubon Society has studied climate change and its impact on bird life and other wildlife, and they've concluded that a properly sited wind turbine is what we need because it's zero emission and helps avoid carbon dioxide. They have over 20 sanctuaries throughout the state of Massachusetts, and they buy green power from us, specifically wind power, to reduce their carbon footprint. And so they've looked at our portfolio. They ask us questions all the time. Right now, they're in the middle of a campaign to get 1,000 members of Mass Audubon to switch to us. So we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to earn their trust because they put a lot of science behind what they do, and They've cautioned us that occasionally it's possible to put a wind turbine in a place that might interrupt with bird migration patterns or nesting patterns, but by and large we've been able to avoid that here in Massachusetts with the projects that we buy from. Here's an example of this slide here shows you where National Grid, NSTAR, and Western Mass Electric get their electricity from, the sources that they get. As you can see, it's I call it a witch's brew. It has a lot of nuclear power, a lot of imported power that could be fossil fuels. It has a lot of natural gas, increasing amounts of natural gas. Still has some coal in there, still has some oil in there. And the wind power that you're seeing, or the solar power, is really there because of the state law that I talked about. Now what's important to know is that when those utilities send you a pie chart like that, and you might see it occasionally in your bill, that's telling you what contracts they have. If you want to picture the New England Power Grid as sort of a big bathtub, all the suppliers are supposed to buy from sources that are contributing to that power into New England, and a Massachusetts consumer might be actually getting its electricity from a generator in Maine. It just all goes into the grid, and the suppliers are able to provide that to you. It doesn't mean that your home would be powered by the electrons from a generator in wind. You might get the electrons from something far closer, but that's essentially the key point is that the utilities are required to have enough contracts to meet everyone's energy needs. So the electrons, the actual things that cause electricity, run through the grid. There's no way to direct specific electrons to go through the grid exactly to your home. It's not that way with fossil fuels, and it's not that way with renewable energy. So this graph shows you a picture of how, whether it's a wind turbine or a power plant, the electrons are going to go into National Grid's distribution system or transmission system, and then the electrons are going to go to your house, and you're going to pay National Grid. But with us, Mass Energy, we're offering you something in addition to just electrons. We're offering you renewable energy certificates, or RECs. Those are also known as I said, renewable energy certificates, tradable renewable certificates, green tags, the environmental attributes of renewable energy credits. And what that means is they represent 1 megawatt hour of renewable energy produced. So the electricity produced by that wind turbine on the left is going to generate some power. And for every 1 megawatt hour, which is 1,000 kilowatt hours, if you look at your electricity bill, we all get billed by kilowatt hours. The average home uses about 600 kilowatt hours per month. So the average consumer might get a megawatt hour every couple of months. So when the wind turbine spins, it's going to generate electricity that goes to a home or goes to a building, but it's also going to generate a renewable energy certificate. Now, you want to consider it to be sort of like a piece of paper or something on an electronic bulletin board. And what that does is it represents the environmental attributes of the renewable energy certificate. So that's what the utilities have to buy in order to comply with the state law. And what we do here at Mass Energy is we want to play keep away. We want to keep the certificates away from the utilities. We want to add to the number of renewable energy certificates that are purchased in New England. And what's important here to note is that renewable energy certificates are produced throughout the country from renewable energy projects, but it's very important to understand that projects in New England have a special value, and this is might be a little difficult to understand, but bear with me. On the left, there's a project that there are places like Texas and Oklahoma and Iowa that have the ability to produce huge wind farms that produce electricity at a very low cost. And so on the green bar is the cost to develop the wind project. And just these numbers are not from any particular project, but let's suppose it costs 7 cents a kilowatt hour. In order to get, in our form of economy here in the United States, in order to get somebody to put the money up, they're going to want to make a profit. And so they're going to be able to earn more than 7 cents, and they're able to do that in a lot of parts of the country. So wind turbines are being built throughout the country. But for every megawatt hour, they're able to also earn some renewable energy certificate revenue. But as you can see, it's the red bar on top. That red bar isn't really necessary to make that project financially viable. Quite frankly, it's like gravy to that developer. If I were building a project in Oklahoma and I could get a lot of any money for the renewable energy certificate, I would take it. The point we're trying to make is when we looked at developing a program, we decided that it didn't make sense for us to buy renewable energy certificates from projects like that because the purchase of renewable energy certificates doesn't make the project any more viable. And so we're trying to spend all the money we need to make renewable energy viable, but not more than is necessary. So on the right-hand side is what we do. Here in New England, the wind projects in particular are much smaller. And so the green bar is higher. It costs about, say, 10 cents a kilowatt hour to develop a wind project. And but we can't, they can't get any more for the electricity necessarily in New England than in other states. And so they need more renewable energy certificate money. And so renewable energy certificates, quite frankly, cost more in New England than they do in places like Texas and Oklahoma. But it's worth it in our viewpoint. If you're willing to, if you're able to contribute renewable energy certificate revenue to a project by signing up for New England Wind or New England Green Start, that's what we're doing here. We're able to make a difference by making these projects come online. A good question somebody just asked was, why does the project revenue cover the cost in the Midwest and not here? It really has to do with mostly economies of scale. In the Midwest, you're able to build maybe 100 wind turbines, or I just read the other day about a huge project in Oklahoma that Google is going to buy into with maybe several hundred wind turbines. And they're able, the economies of scale are very dramatic. There's also it's easier to site wind turbines in places like that. Here, where the size of the wind turbine might be much larger in Oklahoma than what, quite frankly, some people in Massachusetts are willing to allow. And then land costs are much lower in states like that. So their project costs are much, much lower in a lot of states like the Midwest. And when you get when the turbine's up high, in certain parts of the Midwest, they have a very high wind speed, and that helps contribute to the better economics as well. So the point is, we're able to make wind power and other forms of renewable energy viable in Massachusetts, but it just takes a little bit more revenue to make it happen. I hope that answers the question. So our mantra, or our way of doing things, is that the spending on green power should translate into new projects that displace fossil fuels and that do not subsidize projects that would have happened without your money. I call this the hokey pokey. It's what it's all about. And so here's a picture of people signing blades that are about to be installed on the 2 wind turbines in Gloucester. And so what we're saying, it's almost like in real estate. It matters the type and location of the renewable energy certificates that you buy. So we know that our purchase of certificates from the projects that we have been essential to making the projects developable. So what we often do usually is we sign long-term contracts with projects built here in New England. Now here's a map you may have seen before. As you can see, most of the power we're getting is from wind turbines because the economics of wind is better than the other sources to some extent, although solar costs are coming down and anaerobic digestion costs are coming down as well. And so we have a scattering from the East Coast out to Charlemont at the Berkshire East Ski Resort. We're trying to support some projects in Rhode Island as well. And there's 350, maybe 400 solar systems in Massachusetts that are part of our mix, anywhere from a small residential facility to something on top of a school or commercial building. Right in the pretty much dead center, we have a lot of fun with a project at the Jordan Family Dairy Farms in Rutland, Massachusetts, which is an anaerobic digestion project. We call it cow power, even though it's not exclusively cow manure. It also has some food waste. And then at the very top, we're buying low-impact hydro from a facility in Rumford Falls, Maine. For the most part, what makes a difference with our projects are the projects in Massachusetts. And that's what we intend on doing. We keep shopping for projects in Massachusetts. One developer, Chiali Ruiz, developed one of the wind turbines in Ipswich. If you live up that way, you may have seen them. This is the project while it was under construction. And Chiali says a long-term contract with Mass Energy was critical to the project's success. Without it, the project would not have been able to move forward at all. I can tell you that when we buy the renewable energy certificates from that project in Ipswich, we actually have to send the money to Chiali's banker, not to Chiali, because that's part of the financing package that he has. And just to be honest with you folks, it's your money that we're sending to the banker, and that's the difference that you're making. And all of the other projects that we buy from, the developers and the owners have had to look to us for a long-term contract, and they factor that into their decision to build the project. And so there's two ways we're making a big difference. One is through the long-term contract, and the other is by the fact that we're keeping it away from the utilities that need to buy certificates to comply with the state law. Now, for some pretty pictures, this will go quickly, but this is Hull 1, which is built right by, that's a high school, just on the other side of the football field from that wind turbine. And that was the first project we put into our portfolio. That project was built in 2001. Gloucester, 2 wind turbines at Blackburn Industrial Park. There's a third in the background at Varian Semiconductor that is not in our portfolio. The McGlynn School in Medford, that's a smaller one. It's 100 kilowatts. That one there has great educational value, as you can imagine, right by a middle school. The Lynn Water and Sewer Commission put up a 600 kilowatt machine that's helping to handle their high electricity costs that they have at their site. This is the Cow Power project. You can actually go and you can pet your energy source. We take tours of, take people on tours of that facility. That's the big digester back there. They accept a lot of food waste, and so that is helps contribute to the handling of food waste in Massachusetts. We just got another question, Katie.
Yeah, the question is it's a clarifying question. Is the idea of keeping RECs away from the utilities to force them to generate renewable power instead of just purchasing certificates?
No, you have that about half right. The person who asked the question, it's a good question. The way the utilities or other suppliers have to comply with the state law is by purchasing certificates. They're actually they have a very limited ability to by state law to generate power. They're actually discouraged from generating power. They're allowed to just generate a little bit of solar energy. What we're trying to do is force them to look to other projects. So what we're saying is when you buy a certificate from Mass Energy, and when Mass Energy buys it from a generator, that's one that the utilities cannot get. So they're going to have to go shopping just like we have to go shopping, and that helps create a better market. It creates demand for renewable energy certificates, and the more demand there is for renewable energy certificates, the more renewable energy supply has to be put onto the grid, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's a map just showing a little bit of central Massachusetts of the scattering of solar projects there. We'll be updating this pretty soon with a statewide map. But just goes to show you that, and this solar's everywhere, and as you know, it's happening more and more. We're quite optimistic about the future of solar in Massachusetts. Here's it's actually a postcard, but that's a good image of the low-impact hydro facility in Rumford Falls, Maine, that we buy from. Any questions that haven't been asked yet? We're happy to take a few minutes for that.
So we have a couple questions here. The first question was a clarifying question about our programs. She asks, I thought New England Green Start was just 50% renewable. Is it really 100% if you include hydro?
Yes, it is. New England Green Start is 100% renewable energy. To To break it down, 25% is a mix of wind power, solar power, and cow power, and 75% is low-impact hydro.
And then the other question is kind of on the advocacy side. Does Mass Energy work with Citizens Climate Lobby, a national organization, or Climate Exchange, a Massachusetts organization, who are trying to pass legislation to price carbon? Carbon pricing is a different approach to making renewables more competitive.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, we're working with a lot of environmental groups, and we're putting forward a lot of ideas about how to promote clean energy. And quite frankly, there's a lot of good ideas that would work technically in the public's best interest, and putting a price on carbon is at the top of the list. But we're also trying to figure out what is it that legislators are willing to sponsor, what's the best opportunities for getting passed. And so we do generally support a carbon tax in Massachusetts or a price on carbon. We're very active in it's a technical proceeding with the Department of Public Utilities that would give energy efficiency more credit, more funding because of the carbon dioxide that energy efficiency programs avoid. As I said, one of the bills that we're looking to have passed would be to increase the renewable portfolio standard by essentially doubling the rate. We have a graph I could show you that the way we support renewable energy in this country is very complicated, and is far more complicated than it needs to be, essentially to make up for the fact that fossil fuels have been getting a pass on the impact of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases. And so a carbon tax would essentially level the playing field. So we're generally supportive of it, and we're sending in supportive comments to this group called Climate Exchange that's pushing the carbon tax idea. Just real briefly, that would be a revenue-neutral carbon tax where it would essentially put its thumb on the scales to try to make fossil fuels pay a bit more in tax, and that would get rebated back to consumers in various ways. There was another question?
Yep, two more questions. Has Massachusetts recently lost nuclear power supply by Vermont Yankee? If so, does that mean that Massachusetts is now creating more greenhouse gas emissions because nuclear is being replaced by fossil fuels?
Yes, it's a complicated question. Right now, New England's going through a lot of transition. We have approximately 25,000 megawatts of energy capacity in New England, but we're losing about 8,000 megawatts in the next couple of years to retirements. Vermont Yankee is the big nuclear power plant. We're also losing Salem. The Salem power plant has been closed. That was running on coal. The Somerset coal plant as well. And as a result, it's got a lot of people concerned about the impact it's going to have on keeping the lights on, reliability, and on cost. But in general, the emissions from the New England power system have been getting better each year because the coal has gone out and it's being replaced by natural gas and renewables. And we're doing a pretty good job on reducing energy consumption a bit through the energy efficiency programs. When you add it all up, emissions have actually gone down in the last couple of years. A lot of it was impacted by the bad economy of 2009 as well. But looking ahead, it would be very difficult, for example, to replace another big nuclear power plant. We'd have to get really cracking with renewable energy, and that's why, again, we're going back to trying to double the rate at which we add renewable energy, and that's why we want to see more energy efficiency. So we've got to keep moving the carbon emissions down to get to 80% by 2050. Massachusetts actually has a law, the Global Warming Solutions Act, that says we have to get to 25% carbon reductions by 2020 and then 80% by 2050. And right now we are falling a little bit short of the goal for 2020, and so we've got to do a bit better.
And lastly, there was one more question for this section, and it's kind of a clarifying question. She came in a little bit late, but I think it's a good question just to really briefly go over one more time. The question is, why is there still, she's an NSTAR customer, why is there still a generation charge on my NSTAR bill? So I guess just going back over really briefly exactly why you're paying kind of twice, it seems like, for supply, once for generation and once for green power.
Right. What we're able to do by purchasing renewable energy certificates on your behalf is to help bring renewable energy onto the grid. But that's an additional cost on top of the cost of energy supply that you would normally pay. And so really what you're paying is to National Grid or Western Mass Electric or to NSTAR essentially is to have enough electrons or electricity to meet your energy needs. What you're paying us to do is to ensure that those are sourced from renewable energy projects. And so that's essentially why you're getting a bill from the utility and a bill from us. Guess that actually raises a good point. We can move on to the next section.
And we'll address other questions on next question section. There will be one more question section.
Yeah. So some of you are probably getting bombarded with direct mail or even phone calls or maybe even door-to-door salespeople. They're called competitive suppliers, and they're not utilities. And so what happens is the utilities are regulated where they have to change their rates every 6 months. But as we saw in late 2014, the utilities announced that their rates were going to have to go up due to the fact that there's a perceived shortage of natural gas into New England. And so a lot of competitive suppliers came in and claimed that they were able to provide or supply electricity at a lower price. And with this slide, what we're just trying to say is please be aware that a lot of times you have to read the fine print about the fees that they may charge, the savings being guaranteed for just a limited amount of time. Sometimes they will charge you to leave if you found a better deal elsewhere. Sometimes they will offer you a guaranteed price for just 3 months or so, and then after that they will raise the price without having to get your permission. And if you're not paying attention, you may see a big rate jump from them. And they're not regulated. And it's not to say that all companies of this type are bad, but we've seen a lot of offers that we think most people would want to avoid. Then finally, a lot of these companies do what we call as greenwashing. They're selling certificates of the type that we described earlier from places like Texas and Oklahoma that really are not making the kind of difference that I think you would intend on having. That's why you're signing up for a product, is because you're trying to make a difference on the power grid. And so, you know, the first couple, North American Power and Viridian Energy, are doing that kind of greenwashing quite a bit. The third company, Just Energy, just got hit with a $4 million fine by the Attorney General for deceptive marketing practices. So we're not saying you shouldn't ever sign a contract with a competitive supplier. We're just saying read the fine print. And what we find very disturbing is that some competitive suppliers will buy certificates that they need to comply with state law, but they make it look like they're doing something special. And, you know, according to national guidelines, they really should, from the Federal Trade Commission, you're really not supposed to brag about doing something according to state law. And that's something that we encourage you to look at. As I said before, Massachusetts has a law that says that 10% has to come from renewable resources, and next year it'll go up another 1%. So if they're bragging about it, buying from a product or a certain project, you ought to ask them, is that because is that certificate that you're buying, is it for complying with the state law, or is it something additional? And this graph, again, I just wanted to show it to you again. This is essentially the difference. On the left-hand side is what we're seeing a lot of competitive suppliers bring to the market, which quite frankly we think is just greenwashing. And on the right-hand side is what we're doing. And to be honest with you folks, what we're doing is the hard way, but it's very difficult when the economy is difficult and when there's all kinds of companies jumping into the market. But we have decided we're not going to change the way we do it because we believe it's the only way to make green power make a difference, which is to buy the right type of renewable energy certificates. Katie, was there another question?
Yeah, there are a couple more questions. First one about the compliance market. Do you think that increasing 2% per year is something that's realistic to pass maybe this year with current legislature and administration? And what do you think, is this possible, and what would need to happen to make this possible?
Thanks for asking. We do think it's possible. Right now, there's a lot of talk on Beacon Hill about trying to deal with the fact that our winter electricity costs have gone up quite a bit in the last couple of years. And that has to do with a perceived inability of the gas pipeline system to get enough natural gas into New England because we all use it a lot of us use it to heat our homes or our businesses, but then it's also become the predominant fuel the power plants use. And so what happens is when power plants have to run during peak periods, which is essentially 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. at night when it's cold and when it's dark, then the electricity prices tend to skyrocket. And so that has a lot of politicians nervous. And so there's legislation that probably will be passed this year that will probably have some good things in there and some bad things in there. We're worried that it's going to promote more natural gas pipelines, which will probably increase our dependence on natural gas over a long period of time, maybe decades, that we really can't reconcile with the Global Warming Solutions Act. We would rather see an emphasis on energy efficiency, which is a lot cheaper than a new pipeline. But if that bill is going to pass that supports natural gas, we think, as a group of environmentalists, that we think we can get the legislature to increase the renewable portfolio standard to 2%. Having said that, it will not happen unless there is a groundswell of support from people who understand that we need more renewable energy. And so you will occasionally get a message from us asking you to contact your legislator and asking them to support the clean energy bill that we're trying to promote. So please keep your eyes and ears open and let us know if you want to help out. The question was, is Mass Energy doing anything to oppose the gas pipelines? Primarily, yes. The best way we're doing it is by we're making the point that 2 points that are major. One is that energy efficiency is way cheaper than natural gas, whether you bring in a pipeline or not, and we want to maximize the amount of energy efficiency that is savings that is possible in Massachusetts. We also want to see more long-term contracts for renewable energy, which has proven to actually be very cost competitive with natural gas. It's funny that the utilities are very inclined to sign long-term contracts for natural gas, but they're less inclined to sign it for wind projects or solar projects. So we're trying to change that dynamic. We're also pointing out some new research is showing how much methane is leaked by the distribution system that runs gas pipelines under our feet in our cities and towns. And when you account for that, we're saying that energy efficiency and renewables should be given more credit for the amount of methane that they avoid, because some of you may be aware that natural gas is essentially methane, which is chemically it's called CH4, and when that leaks into the atmosphere, it is about 25 to 50 times more harmful to the climate than carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is what you get when you burn natural gas. And so that the leaks are much more than people thought a few years ago. And so we're trying to make sure that there's a good accounting of that. And within a couple of days, you will see a blog from us where we talk about that particular aspect.
One more question for this section, and then we will have the last 5 minutes. We'll address any other unanswered questions. but this question's a good one. What happens to unpurchased green energy or RECs?
Yeah. Unpurchased green energy essentially gets retired unpurchased. In New England in the last couple of years, I don't think that there are hardly any RECs that have been unpurchased. If they go unpurchased, in a sense, that's actually the developer is not getting any economic value for that. It's not good for the developer. But the demand for green power has been pretty high in New England because of the fact of the state law in Massachusetts, and there's also a state law in Rhode Island and Connecticut. So usually somebody will find a seller of RECs will usually find a buyer.
All right, and so I'm going to take over for the last little bit, but Larry will stick around for the final question answers. But I really briefly, so we've gone over a lot of exactly how it all works. It's, can be kind of confusing for most people, and we've kind of found out that when talking to people about this program and marketing the Green Power program, discussing all the factors that we've just laid out, just kind of throwing that at people is usually not the best way to start. So we have a couple of marketing best practice words that we kind of use to describe our program. Our marketing director calls them the adjectives of mass energy. And we definitely recommend starting off with the language I'm about to present and then using the information that Larry has given you as background for confidently answering questions. So the adjectives are easy. It's very easy to sign up for our program. If you're a National Grid, NSTAR, or WMECO customer, you just need to get your most recent electric bill. In the case of NSTAR, you do also need to get a credit or debit card to set up automatic billing, since it is a separate bill at this time for NSTAR. But you basically just go online and you fill out an online join form, and we take it from there and coordinate the green power usage reports and retiring RECs for you. So it's a very easy step that you can take to reduce your carbon footprint. It's effective. It's effective in all the ways that Larry's discussed. We buy Mass Energy is nonprofit, and we're extremely mission-driven, and that makes the RECs that we purchase are the good kind, the high-quality RECs. We refer to them sometimes, but we want to take our members' money and purchase renewable energy that's going to effectively displace fossil fuels and shift our grid here in New England. It's local. That kind of plays into the reason why it's effective. I mean, we're only purchasing from Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Maine because those are the RECs that make the difference. That's the renewable energy that is purchasing those renewable energy certificates is what's going to stimulate increased supply here on our grid, which displaces fossil fuels here in New England in our backyard, so that we don't have to have as many. It's tax deductible because we're nonprofit. So that's another huge selling point for our program. As far as we know, we're the only nonprofit green power supplier that services Massachusetts utilities, and because we are nonprofit, we're mission driven. The payments, the additional payments, that amount of money, the 3.8 cents with the 2.4 cents per kilowatt hour that you use, is considered federally tax deductible because you're paying to promote the public good and shift our electricity grid. So that's a really nice perk that our members can take advantage of. So easy, effective, local, tax deductible, and nonprofit are our favorite words to use when talking to people about the programs. And it's usually, we'll say something like, we provide a really easy way to make the switch to local renewable energy, and because we're nonprofit, we're tax deductible and mission driven, which makes our program extremely effective. So kind of bringing it all together when talking to people in a kind of a simple way is generally the best way to start a conversation with people. And then if people have questions, you can always send people over to us, or you can use kind of the tools that Larry has provided us and answering the questions yourself. And then lastly, I think what really makes us different is we're local. We're based in Jamaica Plain, and we really like to engage with our members and bring them into kind of, our members have made the switch, and we always like people to go further in the environmental movement and get involved in renewable energy beyond simply just filling out the form online. So we do a lot of events and turbine tours, which we invite all of our members to, and we encourage our members to bring friends and family with them. This is by far the best way to, if you bring a friend to an event or a turbine tour, it's a really powerful way to demonstrate why making the switch with Mass Energy is a good thing to do and an effective way to shift the grid here in Massachusetts. So this is a turbine tour in Ipswich. We generally have a group of people. We have food. We take the group over to the base of the turbine, and in some cases we can even go into the turbine, see the mechanics and all sorts of fancy machines in there and look up and how tall it is. It's usually a pretty great experience. This is Gloucester. And so to wrap it all up and save some time for questions, we've gotten a couple questions. I'll just say that our website, we try to make it a wealth of information for our members and prospects alike. So please go to our website, use the material, read up on the material that we've already put together. All of these, if you go www.massenergy.org/any of these keywords, you'll find good information. And then here, massenergy.org/bootcamp, we've aggregated all the information together on one page so that you can easily kind of explore around and get some more information. So thank you very much for listening to us. We'll take last questions if you can stick around. Again, I'm Katie Kidwell. Our executive director who's with us is Larry Cretion. These are our emails. This is our phone numbers. I'm usually the best person to get a hold of for questions. My extension is 156, and I'm always happy to talk about anything that we've talked about today and beyond if you give me a call.
Folks, we just have a couple of questions. There's nothing magic about 1 o'clock. I appreciate the fact that you've been with us for almost an hour. We'll probably take 5 to 10 minutes to answer the questions, or you can ask a couple more before we're done. One question was, can I address the perceived shortage of gas, and what's our take on it? We talked about that a little bit before. The utilities are claiming that we have a shortage of natural gas in New England. We think that it's absolutely true that during peak periods, roughly 4 to 8 p.m. during cold winter nights in December, January, February, we are prone to having the price per kilowatt hour during those peak. power, at night during cold winter months. And so there are other ways we can meet that peak demand through energy efficiency and energy storage, demand response, things like that. So it's a complicated story, but there's no question we all have to do better in order to eliminate the need for pipelines. We should have been doing more of this 5 and 10 years ago. One question was, do you have printed materials that we could distribute to our neighbors? Yes, we do, and we ask that you contact Katie if you want to request printed materials. We can get them out to you, and we appreciate the offer. Can we work with customers in towns with municipal light plants? Yes, we can. It's a little bit complicated. We can't charge you based upon usage because the municipal light plants don't provide that to us. But if you go to our website and look for New England Wind Friends, we could charge you a fixed amount per month. Or you could email Katie and she could tell you more about that. There's about 40 towns in the state that have a municipal utility other than National Grid or Instar. Somebody asked, do we have any need for volunteers other than supporting legislation and spreading info to our contacts? Yes, we do. We will take note of that and we'll be in touch. Or you can email Katie and we'll probably be able to find a project. And we appreciate your offer.
Yeah, I'll send a follow-up email, and you can simply reply to that if you have any interest in getting more involved.
Leslie asked, can the university where I work sign up for this? Yes, they can. We have served some large customers before. We've talked to a lot of universities. What you will need to do is work with us to educate as to why our program is the better one. Sometimes the universities, quite frankly, do a little greenwashing, and they will buy RECs from Texas and Oklahoma that have very little impact. But for a large customer, we could probably, of course, do better in terms of price than we might for an individual consumer. So I can't say that the horse will drink, but you can get him to the water and we can try to work together. So let's see, any other questions? Someone said thank you, and you're welcome, and we appreciate it. It's now 1 o'clock, and somebody said, in theory, somebody said, could oil be used to generate electricity? Oil is cheap now, and we wouldn't need more gas. That's an excellent point. We have actually made that point ourselves. This winter, oil is about 1/3 of the cost of last winter for a power plant. And so the economic damage that this problem is much less than for New England than it was a year ago. And as much as we don't like oil, or the consumption of oil, we think having that be part of the mix in the short term for the next 2 or 3 years while we get renewable energy and energy efficiency up to speed is probably a lot better than buying into natural gas pipelines for 30 years. And so the problem we have is going to require many different solutions. And that's one that can be on the table. The object of the game, of course, is to get the emissions down to what the science tells us we need, 80% by 2050, and how to do it in the most economically sensible way possible. That's what we're trying to do. So thank you very much, folks. If you have additional questions, just please email Katie. But just out of respect for your time, it's 1:02, and we want to thank you all, and we wish you the best, and enjoy the snow if it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you.